What's up, HyperFast Nation? On this episode, I sat down with a member of the Keri Shull Team. He has over a decade of experience in the real estate industry. Started off in property management, so we talked a lot about that experience versus being an agent on the team and the tools that he was able to utilize at the Keri Shull Team to have such a fast start in real estate. Welcome to the show, Drew Wadsworth. Welcome to the show today, Drew.
Hey, well, thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we've got a lot of great stuff to talk about today. Why don't you give the HyperFast Nation a little bit of your bio and background and how you got into real estate?
All right. Well, perfect. So, the spark note of it is, so I started out actually about 12 years ago now. I started more on the property management side of the fence. So I was with Bizzuto for about 8 years and Toll Brothers for 3 before joining the Keri Shull Team. So I've always kind of been in real estate. It's always been a passion of mine, and I've loved it since day one and have had a lot of different hats through the real estate journey. But for me, I think when I had the opportunity for the Keri Shull Team, it was one I couldn't turn down, and I've been happy ever since. I can't complain.
What were you doing on the property management side?
Yeah, so I started off actually right out of college. I was a sales and service associate. I think they call it sales and marketing now to make it a little bit more fun for those marketers coming out of college. But I started that, so it was all sales and just kind of renting out Class A luxury high-rise buildings from there. Kind of worked my way up the ladder to a regional manager at that front with Toll Brothers and oversaw our DC portfolio there. So really from all the way through sales, operational management, I found my kind of niche to be a lot in lease-up capacity. So delivering all basically the properties from ground zero, no one in the building, all the way through stabilization, around 95% full. So had buildings ranging from 100 units up to 525 and had a portfolio of about 2,000 by the end of it. So it was pretty big guys and also some boutique buildings in between.
Wow. How was the transition from doing that to working with buyers and sellers, buying and selling a home, like a much more, I guess I should say, intimate level?
Yeah, absolutely. I think probably the most seamless transition was, it's still a customer experience. And
right.
I think that is something that was very translatable from, the more multifamily mixed-use side, and then obviously dealing with, people at a much more intimate level, like you mentioned, and helping them buy a home. And it's a much more kind of one-on-one situation versus you're overseeing, a massive community. But I think probably, that transition was a little bit more seamless than maybe from other industries if you're coming into real estate, because it really comes down to the customer journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, setting expectations are so key in real estate. And I think that kind of came hand in hand with, even if it's a resident or you're obviously buying a home versus renting, it's still, is a pretty big transaction either way. It's, the home is everything. It's a sanctuary. It's where people, spend majority of their time. So I think that translation was very nice for me to know what expectations to set, really delivering a Class A professional journey for anybody, renter or buyer, and how important that is to any consumer today at the end of the day for there.
What's been the most challenging thing about the switch?
Yeah, probably the schedule.
Right.
I think that's definitely, I'm used to working some pretty big hours, and real estate doesn't sleep, whether it's renting or buying for the most part. But I would probably say, managing the schedule was probably something where, there's still some structure even on the multifamily side. You got weekends, people who don't really expect a response maybe after 5, 6, 7 o'clock. But in our side, it's you could be talking at 11 o'clock in negotiations to make sure that you're that one step ahead over another offer to get it done. So I think between trying to navigate, time management, really making sure that you're using your time efficiently, was something that I learned pretty quickly, because you could be out there a lot, not looking at anything really in particular, and you're realizing, hey, this is not worth the time. You want to make sure that when you're with a customer or a client, that, hey, we're looking at XYZ because these are really great XYZ homes. They're not just going to be anything out there. And obviously there's a portion to that where you're feeling out neighborhoods, and there's an element that will always come to it. But, I think the schedule for sure was something that it doesn't stop. But at the same time, you got to make sure that you're in control of that too.
And describe to the listeners and viewers what it's like being not just on the Keri Shull team, right? You didn't just join a real estate team. You joined the team within the team, correct?
Yeah, huge. And I think, I'm very fortunate with that, because I obviously with other friends and colleagues that are at other places, I think that's the one unique feature with the Keri Shull team, is that you have such a massive amount of support within the team. From day one, obviously I'm on a mini team here, and having that mentorship and guidance was, I think, really paramount to my initial success. But I think on that other layer, just with the Keri Shull team, having the training, and really just the overall resources that we provide here, I think, jumping into it, maybe some familiarity on my side with real estate and having a little bit of a background there is helpful. But there is a whole nother world to learn. And I think with our trainings, even just the training right off the bat that we have, and the amount of time and hours that we have, just internally on that, was critical to know off the bat, how to make decisions quickly. Time kills deals, I think everybody knows, but really understanding what you needed to know off the bat was just monumental, and really making sure that my start was as successful as it was off the bat.
And let's talk about the structure a little, because you are on a what I would call unique structure, or this program we have is a unique structure compared to the traditional agent starting out. The traditional agent starting out, as you know, 100% commission. So if you leave that W-2 job, it might be 90 to whatever 120 days till you close your first deal. Depending on how good you are at that, but at any rate, there's going to be some gap where your paycheck is zero. Yours is a little different, correct?
Yeah. So for me, joining the mini team was great. Again, it's that team within a team, and I think having someone like Amy as well, just with her just background and success in general, was amazing. And going from a $0 paycheck or not having any paycheck for your first month, you're like, holy cow, this is a different world, especially having been W-2'd for quite a while there. But I was also very fortunate. I was able to get my first deal within a couple weeks of joining the team, which was fantastic. And then really having that snowball from there, and just kind of using that momentum, picking it up, and just being able to get, obviously with our structure and the ISAs, and getting a lot of clients in from that side of the fence. Also fortunate from being here too, so I had a really pretty good SOI base as well, and a lot of my friends, luckily enough, they're using me. But no, I think that was definitely something that was a little bit of a strange feel, not to have a paycheck, but it didn't take long, fortunately, to get those paychecks to start to come in. And that's a combination of how we work as a team, the ISA structure, the support of our training, but also mini team as well.
Yeah, that's one of the things at the Keri Shull team that we work hard at, is to minimize that gap that new agents have from when they get their license to when they get their first paycheck. So we are dedicated to providing the leads, training, and support to minimize that gap. We are also have a program which if you're listening to this, maybe you've never even heard exist, but it's a program where we actually bring some agents on as salaried agents, so you're guaranteed a salary. We are expanding that program as well. So if you're looking to join a real estate team in the DC area, Northern Virginia, Maryland, whether you're experienced or completely brand new, we have traditional commission-based roles as well as salary-based roles. You can go to kerishullcareers.com for more information on that, or shoot me an Instagram at @TheDanLesniak. Shoot me a DM there as well. you mentioned SOI, right? And ISAs and some terms that people may not completely
get right
understand.
Yeah.
So, I think a lot of agents in particular probably are familiar with SOI, sphere of influence.
Sure.
So, I think, you mentioned you were getting some closings, some deals from that. Was that hard to, go out and convince your friends
to say, hey, let me help you with the biggest investment of your life? It definitely was a little intimidating at first. I think that's something that your friends, you don't want anything to ever go south or anything like that. But I think ultimately you get a couple deals obviously under your belt. You're feeling really great. You learn every single day. I think that's one thing about this industry that's that I love about it, is that you never stop learning. Something's always evolving or changing. I think it was definitely something that you got to feel pretty confident about, and obviously it's your friend, so there's a little bit more of a pressure in there too ultimately. And but I've been lucky to be able to work with some really amazing friends to get in there, that they gave me the opportunity, and at the end of the day too, they have choices, and I think that's something that a friend ultimately will have that like loyalty off the bat, and they trust you because they obviously know you. But at the same time, every experience you always want A plus, again, world-class experiences for anybody, whether that's a friend or not. It was a little intimidating to say, hey, you got to make sure you balance professional and personal relationships there, and you got to still have those really tough discussions sometimes, or just be candid about their home as well. You're not going to their home to hang out, you're going to sell it, and ultimately there is a transaction and a business side to that you want to make sure that you blend. You don't want to maybe get too gray in those areas. You want to kind of keep them black and white, and I try to make sure I do a good job with that and set those expectations early with a lot of my friends that are out there, or family, or whatever it may be. Just to let them know, hey, I'm obviously your friend, but at the same time, I want the best experience for you, whether that's on the sell side to get the most amount of money as quickly as possible, or on the buy side saying, hey, I want to make sure I get you the best deal out there. So,
hey, hold that thought. Do you want to get 100 tips for free from my best-selling real estate book, The Hyperlocal HyperFast Real Estate Agent? If you do, go to hyperfasttips.com and you can download 100 of my best tips today. Again, that's hyperfasttips.com. You can download 100 tips on how to grow your business, get more clients, deliver more value to more people. Go to hyperfasttips.com.
How did the backing of the team help with SOI in particular? Obviously, you know them, you have the relationship, but they know you, and I think this is a challenge for new agents in particular. Yeah. Like, they know you as Drew, the property management guy, right? Or what this applies to, whatever field you were in or whatever you were doing before real estate. So how did the backing of the team help with that, like leaning on the team's stats, reputation,
absolutely,
etc.?
Yeah, I mean, the Keri Shull Team is pretty well known, right, through the DMV area. I mean, we are the number one team out there, and you really see, as I always tell my friends, once they know we start talking about real estate, I was like the go-to guy for like a lot of renting questions and whatnot. Now it's been nice because it's been flipped obviously to the buy side. But I said, now that you know the Keri Shull name, you will never not see her around the area. And it's so funny how many of my friends are like, I saw her on the bus, and I saw her, the sign, I saw the open house sign. So it's kind of funny, once their mind starts to really realize and tick in about the Keri Shull Team, it's funny how much all my friends now say, like, they see us everywhere. But I think the one nice thing with the team is, they really helped me kind of like, I guess, categorize and say, who can you reach out to, and kind of sat down with, our head of sales and said, hey, well, let's kind of map out, because, being from this area is great, but then, so many people, how do you really kind of focus in and say, what's the kind of best way to approach this, and really say, this is where you should really kind of hyper-focus, not to take from the hyper-fast, hyper-focus side. But I think that was something that was really helpful for me, just to say, okay, great, here's my niche. This is where I would really like to focus on. I think too, being at the age that I am, a lot of my friends are either upsizing, growing their families, or getting out of that rental side and looking to buy for their first home. So I think that was a nice kind of just transition period as well. But the team was really helpful in just making sure that, hey, let's look at the whole map. Let's look at all your SOI, and let's see where we can really kind of say this is where maybe we look and focus a little bit more, and how do we really kind of make that a more approachable conversation if it doesn't come naturally. But that was definitely helpful for sure in that world.
Yeah, I think that's something that if you're a new agent, you should consider. Maybe you do have a big SOI network, etc. They know you from this past life, but how will the brokerage or the team in particular, help you to capitalize on those relationships? The other term you threw out, which some people may not be familiar with, so let's just dig into it a little bit. ISAs, and you mentioned appointments, so it's inside sales agents, right? So here at the team, we of course have the big marketing department that generates the leads, but we don't just toss those leads, those we'll call them semi-warm or warm leads at the agents. We actually have people on the phones that, call them, vet them, scrub them, if you will, and then appoint or get appointments with the ones that are ready now. How has that affected your business?
Yeah, it's been great, and I think that's the one nice thing that I think we do a little bit differently here. And having the ISAs, really have, as Daniel mentioned, kind of go through the leads and get the ones that are really, either motivated or obviously wanting to meet in front of a realtor and say, hey, I'm ready to make this journey. Can you give me a little bit more information about it? But I, have been able to really capitalize a lot on that front as well. I think that is a massive time saver. We are not spending hours upon hours just doing cold calls or just, doing our own buckets of leads and hoping that we'll be able to get somebody in front of us. I think, having that resource and having our whole department that takes care of that for you. So all you do is just go to the Zoom, or obviously better in person if they come down to the office, and you're just having that meeting and saving hours and hours and hours of time in between that, which allows you to also then save hours to go out with that client, to go do showings, spend time, informing them, teaching them about the market, whatever that might be. And you're not just wasting, I don't want to say maybe wasting, but you're not allocating all that time to hopefully get somebody in front of you. And being able to get those buyer agreements signed right off the bat from those leads has been monumental in my initial journey here and success so far.
What, you joined almost a year ago, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And the DC market then was in a low inventory environment, as it really has been the last 10 years. I mean, there's been varying degrees of low inventory, I'd say, for the last decade in the Washington, D.C. market. So it's probably been, depending on the area and the time, either low, very low, or almost non-existent.
Negligent.
Like negative inventory almost sometimes.
There has been those days.
Over the time that you've been here, the last year or so, what patterns or shifts have you seen in the market, in terms of inventory, if any, and buyer, I guess, appetite to write the offer to get the home?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say even like in the last few weeks, even month, I mean, you've seen a little bit of a shift, and it's happened kind of quick, between one, inventory has been upticking really since March, April. It's been nice to see a little bit more out there. And I think you're kind of seeing that inflection point of, a seller-buyer market. I still think it's still a pretty seller market out there. But I think you're starting to see the sellers want to come out and really capitalize on that last bit of that seller's market, leading to some more inventory for sure. I think buyers, obviously interest rates is the forefront of everybody's mind right now, but I still think there are motivated buyers out there, and I think there's ways that you can kind of work around that, and knowledge is power there, and kind of seeing what their comfort levels are, their finances, and so forth. But we are starting to see a little bit of a balancing almost, and I think it actually it depends how you look at it. It's all kind of framework and mindset on that front. You know, you might not see the 8 to 12 offers on a home. You might only see 3 to 4 or 5. A little bit more days on market, what we're seeing now, especially maybe more in that condo world. Single family is still pretty hot. But I do think that, you know, you're kind of getting a balancing act through the market, which I think is kind of the intent of a lot of the instruments being pulled and levers being pulled in the financial world for that front. But I do think you're seeing, you know, instead of those escalations of, you know, $50, $75, $100,000, you're not catching those as much anymore, which has been nice. But at the same time, interest rates have kind of eaten into that a little bit too. So it's all really a balance depending on, you know, the number game and how you want to approach it. But I will say that, yeah, it has been nice. I've gotten even listing agents to call me back now, which has been good. Before they were just like, yeah, we'll get an offer. There's no big thing on that one. But they actually are following up with me too, which is definitely a sign of that the market has been turning a little bit towards the buyer. So if you still want to buy, it's still a great time. There's no doubt about it. Just making sure that, you know, you get pre-approved and get those numbers done right off the bat, so you're knowing what you can go in with. That purchasing power is going to be key to any start of the journey.
Yeah, and I guess so far we've seen inventory, man. I remember a few months ago in some parts of DC, Northern Virginia, you'd see inventory that was like 7 days, 10 days.
Yeah.
Now I think the general average of the entire area is like a month, which 3 months and less is considered a seller's market. 3 to 6 is
Right.
you know, neutral. Over 6, buyer's market. So we're still in that seller's territory, but it's been closer to where we've historically in the last decade seen DC inventory. So if you are out there thinking of buying, it's a lot easier, not completely easy, depending on the home type and the neighborhood, but
exactly
a lot easier than it was, you know, a few months ago for sure.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. And I think, you know, it's actually kind of a, you know, again, maybe a little pocket to get in there where you're going to maybe see some of those buyers freeze a little bit and kind of see what happens. So you're kind of losing a little bit of the demand on that side. The supply is coming a little bit better now on the sell side. So I think there is a nice pocket right now with obviously interest rates, they're rising. I think they're going to continue to probably rise based on everything that's been out there. But I still think you can really get a pretty good deal right now that they exist. There's no doubt about it. And there's not as much pressure as there was last year for sure in some of those situations.
Hey, hold that thought for a minute. Do you want to take your real estate business to the next level? If you do, there's no reason to go it alone. Learn from people who've been where you want to go. Keri and I have sold billions of dollars in real estate. We've netted over 7 figures for 7 years in a row now, and we want to see if you would be a good fit to work for us. We don't work with a lot of people, but we want to give you a chance to get on a free strategy call to see if we can help you get your business to the next level. Go to hyperfastcoach.com and apply for your discovery session today. Again, that's hyperfastcoach.com.
Yeah, I think the challenge for a lot of buyers is they're probably kicking themselves because they missed out on the 4% interest rates and or 3s even, and now they're in the 5s, maybe even low 6s. You've got the property management side, so I'm sure you still are fairly in tune with the rental market.
Yep.
How is that affecting buyers' ability to accept the higher interest rate? Because I assume on the one hand, while that's painful, so is seeing a double-digit percentage increase in your rent.
Yeah,
right?
100%. And I think, you know, that's a conversation with a lot of first-time home buyers I'll have. And having such a background in the rental side and in knowing that, you know, there's no rent control in a lot of these new buildings. They're pretty much free to go wherever they want. And that's going to be, you know, a lot of these buildings too. I mean, it's kind of crazy. Like Navy Yard is just blowing up. I mean, it's almost like every day there's a new building sometimes down there. You know, same with Noma and a lot of those other kind of up and coming parts of the city. But, you know, that's a conversation I like to have with a lot of renters is, you know, hey, you know, it might be tough to eat that 6% because it was 3% maybe, you know, this time last year. But at the same time, you're not getting anything out of that, and you're getting 20% increases on your rent, depending on when you rent. I mean, there's a lot of those pandemic rents that were in there just to say, hey, let's get people in, let's make sure that the building is full. And they got some probably amazing deals. The concessions out there in a lot of these new buildings is something to also, that's enticing for them to go on for another year, 1 free month or 2 free months, whatever it might be. But I think at the end of the day, in your long game, you're looking at a number that just doesn't make sense to continue down that path, because you'll just continue to see that rent increase. It's rare any rent decrease. I think I maybe did one in 10 years.
Yeah.
So, you're looking at an equation, and it's always nice to do those kind of pre-qualification calls with lenders, because they start to see immediately, oh my God, it's almost the same thing as a mortgage as it is for your rent.
Well,
except
even in a normal market, you're going to see a 2 to 3% rental increase a year, which after 3 years, that's double digits, right? I looked at a multifamily deal, and I'm sure this is going on everywhere in the country, but this was in a different area, not in the DC market, but they're selling this deal with 38 units. And the seller says, our rents are below market. You can go from $1,500 a unit, which they're at now, to $2,000. So it's like a 33% increase in rent.
Yeah.
And the one of the buyer reps down there that I talked to said, maybe you could get that, but it might be like $1,850, right? So he's saying like worst case on that, like 24% increase. But either way, someone's going to buy the deal.
Yeah.
And then 38 rents when they renew are going up 23 to 33%, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's happening everywhere.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that's, the ultimate discussion. And I think that's where you kind of, see again that point of, do I continue to rent, or is really buying going to be the spot? I think, there's always the conception that everybody needs 20% down payment. I think that's usually one of those hurdles that you kind of talk about right off the bat too. Everyone thinks they need that amount, and it's just not true. I think the national average is like 7.8 or something in terms of down payment. Walking them through, what programs are out there, what maybe they can use depending on income and a couple other factors, obviously, that would probably play into some of those programs. But knowing those are going to be important, because you'll be able to educate them to say, hey, this is actually possible more than you ever thought. You don't need $50,000 right now to go buy a home. It could be substantially less than that. And really having those conversations is just really the first step to make them know that it's actually doable. I think a lot of times people just don't think it's possible, and they just continue to rent because it's easier inherently. I mean, you're just saying, yes, another year, great. And then another year is another year, another year. You're looking at double digits at that point, in terms of whatever rent increase you're getting. But yeah, so it's interesting to have as much of a background I have on the rental side, and then seeing now on the buying side, and really kind of blending both those worlds together to find that perfect spot for that next buyer.
Yeah, and I think right now, if you're in that situation where you're kind of ready to lock in your cost of living, give up the, unlimited rental increases.
Yeah.
You might not like the 6, right? But you've got options. You can do an ARM, get it lower, adjustable rate mortgage. You can put more money down to reduce your payments. Lots of ways to deal with it. What do you think the market will do from here, both nationally and locally in the DC area?
Yeah. Big question, Dan. So, I think we'll probably see, in what we have seen, a little bit of a pause. I think everybody's kind of trying to understand and navigate their own seas right now, and I think there's a lot of fear out there. I'd probably say that's probably a word that you would probably get in the word bubble if you were to ask, 100 random people what's their sentiment on the market right now. And I think, to overcome that, I think that's where, a skilled agent, with that, getting the resources, whether they're from here internally on our team, and just going out and making sure that you're current on everything. A smooth sea never made a skilled sailor. And I think you really just need to make sure that you know what's going on for your client. I think there'll be a little bit of a pause. I think we've seen that kind of everywhere. People are digesting, people trying to figure out what's happening with inflation, everything going on in the world. I do think you'll probably see maybe at the end of the summer a really nice pop. I think once people kind of understand what's going on, you know, whether they talk with an agent and kind of figure that out a little bit more, or they kind of inform themselves and start to realize, okay, you know, 3% wasn't going to be here forever. You kind of get those clients too, if they had been looking last year, they're kind of kicking themselves, as you mentioned, and they're kind of getting over their own, like, shoot, I probably shouldn't have waited. And they're getting over that too. And then you're getting new buyers that are coming on the market, or sellers trying to say, hey, okay, what's going on here? Walk me through it. So I think we'll probably see a little bit of pause per se, but I think that's going to be that digestion period. I think once you really get through that, you're going to get to August. You're going to probably see a pretty good fall would be my guess. I think you'll see a little bit of the kind of traditional Thanksgiving, winter kind of freeze in general, where things kind of just slow down at its own natural pace. But I think you're going to see things really start to pick back up through the end of the summer into an early fall. I'm pretty optimistic on that.
All right, Drew. Well, I appreciate you being on the show today. I always like to wrap up with a HyperFast round, if you're ready for some rapid fire questions.
Let's hit it.
What's your biggest piece of advice to a new real estate agent?
Organization. You definitely need to be organized right off the bat. Take the time to do it. It'll save you hours and hours on the other side.
What's the biggest mistake that you see successful real estate agents making?
They stop. You got to keep going. You always have to keep getting the appointments. You always have to kind of keep the foot on the gas. You can't get comfortable. I think it's pretty easy once you get a couple to say, hey, things are going good. You got to keep it going. You never know what's going to happen.
What's one thing most agents don't do that they should?
Be organized.
How many deals are you on track to complete in your first year?
If we're looking at just year to year when I started, 25.
All right. What's your goal for year 2?
Year 2, 40.
All right. Where do you see yourself 10 years from now?
It's a great question. Hopefully on a beach, hanging it up and retiring early. That'd be nice, hanging out with you down in Florida. Honestly, it's a great question. I'm not 100% sure. I think you just got to kind of ride the wave, see what happens. And in 10 years, if I could be retired, I would love to do that.
All right. Thank you so much for being on the show today. If people want to reach out with you and connect and learn more about buying and selling, or just talk about real estate in general, what are the best ways for them to connect with you?
Yeah, go ahead. Email me, drew@kerishullteam.com. Instagram, you can follow me there, DMV Realtor Drew. And feel free to slide in the DMs, email, call, come on down to the office. Pretty much always here.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. To all of our listeners and viewers out there, thank you for tuning in. And please share this episode with other people that you think would benefit from watching or listening to the episode. We'll see you next time.
Alrighty.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure and go to hyperfastagent.com to learn about upcoming in-person and online events. And don't forget to share this show with someone that you think could benefit from hearing it, and make sure you subscribe on YouTube or anywhere that you can find podcasts.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the HyperFast Show. Subscribe to us if you want to make sure you get the latest and greatest HyperFast shows. And remember, we love reviews. Reviews help us bring better and better guests and improve our shows. So give us the good, the bad, and the ugly. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you next time.
Hey guys, thanks for sticking around to the end. I hope you enjoyed that video, and if you want to see more, click right here. And if you want 100 real estate tips from my best-selling book, click right here to download them instantly. And if you're new to this channel, click below to subscribe.